Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Welcome to Speech in the Silence, the podcast that is all Thelema all the time. Visit us and listen to our complete archive of programming at speechinthesilence.com or contact us at thelemapodcast@gmail.com.
There is a mystery at the heart of beauty. It is the mystery of appearances, illusions, the mystery of shadows. When we talk about appearances, we talk about them in opposition with reality. We have appearances on the one hand, and we have reality on the other. And between these two concepts, appearance and reality, we naturally assign a hierarchy. Appearance is the lesser, reality the greater. Light is the greater, shadow the lesser. Much of our lives is dictated by the attempt to get past mere appearances and to somehow arrive at the truth. We struggle every day with illusions in the world, the deceptive behaviors of other individuals. We even struggle with illusions and shadows within ourselves in our quest to understand who we truly are. So pervasive is the problem of illusion that human beings have devised a set of practices, namely those of the natural scientific method, in order to set limits to the basic human tendency to just make shit up, literally all the time. Our lives are a struggle against illusion, a struggle against the dark, and our attempt to reach the light. And yet, in the case of beauty, whether we're speaking now of natural beauty, beauty of a mountain or of a forest, or whether we're speaking about artistic beauty, beauty of a painting, a sculpture, a film, beauty of music. In those cases, it is precisely appearances which concern us most. We don't mind the fact that something beautiful is merely an appearance, that it's not the real thing, but an illusion. When we're experiencing beauty, all the interest lies right at the surface of things. And yet, despite the apparent shallowness of these experiences of the beautiful, such experiences carry a depth, a profundity of meaning that they have the power to change the course of a life, sometimes forever. These experiences are purely subjective in nature. And more than anything else, they provoke feelings rather than concrete cognitions about the world. And yet, despite that fact of being merely subjective and merely feeling-based in nature, the experience of beauty is so profound that human beings have seen fit to include beauty alongside truth and goodness as our highest ideals. How is it that something so seemingly weak and shallow as an appearance can have such power? If we are to look at beauty, we're drawn naturally to the issue of appearances, especially subjective appearances. If we wish to understand the nature of subjective appearances, though, we have to consider the human body, and in particular, we have to consider the senses. We are presented with appearances because we encounter the world through our senses, through our bodies. Our souls do not have unmediated access to reality. The content is filtered through our faculty of sensation. Each of us is essentially a spiritual being. Every man and every woman is a star. Each of us comes from the starry abode. Our proper place is alongside the immortals, the gods, in a place without time, without motion, and without speech. And yet we are also told by Crowley that each star or soul must eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and take up labor and pain as its portion, and death as its doom. In other words, each of us takes up a body. We incarnate. And as a result, we become subject to conditions. This process is dramatized in the Minerval and first degrees of Man of Earth. Each of us is an eternal, immortal being. What would have prompted any of us to turn away from the fire of eternity and to gaze into and to become lost in the shadows? Each of us has traded the fullness of being for a world of impermanence, constant change, and absence. We trade our self-sufficiency, our freedom from conditions, to exist in a world where nothing can truly be said to be I, me, or mine. And as a result, we trade bliss for suffering. We become subject to birth, aging, sickness, tragedy, death. A life of pain and suffering, punctuated by the malevolence of other beings. What would make a god want to do this? It seems like we relinquish our hold on the light, only to spend the rest of our lives searching everywhere for it to get it back. What is this? Are we hiding our own car keys on ourselves now? Why would anyone, let alone an omniscient and omnipotent God, want to come here, of all places? And yet perhaps this is not what happened at all. Perhaps we never did turn away from the light. On the contrary, perhaps we looked intently into the flames of the fire of eternity. And therein, in that world of stillness and eternity and silence, we found this world of time, of motion, and of shadows, and became drawn into it through our love of the light. And were we able to perceive properly this world of shadows and suffering that we dwell in, we would find hidden there in those shadows precisely that other world of light, of stillness, and of peace that we seek. And if we had the vision to find one in the other, time in eternity, and eternity in time, motion within stillness, stillness within motion, silence within speech, and speech within silence, then the distinction between those two worlds would drop away, and our minds would leap forward into the heart of the mystery lying beyond any of them. The mystery of heaven and of earth, of eternity and creation. even as on the resounding wind-swept heights of Mytilene, some god-like woman casts aside the lyre, and with her locks of flame as an aureole, plunges into the wet heart of the creation. So I, O Lord my God, there is a beauty unspeakable in this heart of corruption, where the flowers are aflame. If this story is true, if the zero is only to be found in the two, and if the two is only to be found in the zero, if they are in essence identical, then we must reconsider the role of the body in our spirituality. And in particular, we must reconsider the role of the senses. The senses are not barriers between our divine souls and reality. On the contrary, the senses are divine tools. The body is divine. The problem is not that we have senses. The problem is that we do not yet know how to use our senses properly, with the result that our senses end up using us instead. And what we therefore require is what the great German poet Friedrich Schiller referred to as an aesthetic education, after the Greek word for sensation, aesthesis. When each of us cast aside the lyre and plunged into the creation, we took with us into this world something from that other eternal world. Each of us brought a secret seed. Crowley refers to this secret seed by many names. The secret self, Aleph. Secret, O secret, that is hidden in the being of all that lives. Harpocrates, Horpokrat, the virgin self. This seed contains within it a remembrance of the light, a memory of eternity, a memory of what was lost. It is by virtue of this seed that each of us knows of the existence of the light, even though we live in a world of apparent total darkness. When this seed came into this world, it landed in the black soil of Malkuth. And there it remains, concealed within the heart, and most of us don't even know that we carry it, except for the occurrence every now and again of some barely audible yearning for something else, something remembered from long ago. Yet should we bring our mere attention to this silent seed, something miraculous begins to take place. All on its own, the seed germinates and it begins to grow. And all on its own, as if by magic or miracle, it pushes through the shadows and instinctively pushes through the soil and heads toward the light. And should we supply this new growth or neophyte with its proper share of food, air, water, and sunlight, then it will grow. And by seed, and by root, and by stem, and by bud, and by leaf, and by flower, it will unfold and articulate itself into the light. And it will bear fruit. In the Theravada Buddhist tradition, this fruit is called Maggaphala, fruit of the path. It is the direct comprehension of the deathless, which occurs through unbinding, or nibbana. In our tradition, it is called gnosis, knowledge of the divine, knowledge of God. It is the full expression of the knowledge of the light, which was merely implicit in the silent seed, or Aleph. And in time, that fruit will fall from the branch, and it will break open on the ground. And the seeds contained therein will go into the black earth once again, thereby completing one full cycle of the cosmological process, the upward arc of which Crowley refers to as initiation. In Magic and Theory and Practice, Crowley draws a parallel between initiation and alchemy. In the case of alchemy, we are once again dealing with a secret seed. This time it is the secret fire, or the secret sun, concealed within one of the base metals. And then by means of the alchemical process, we bring that seed forth. We make it manifest, thus transforming a base metal into gold, bringing out its hidden sun. This idea of there being a secret flame or a secret sun concealed at the heart of matter is exceedingly ancient. We first find mention of it in the writings of Empedocles, from whom we get our notion of the four elements. Empedocles claimed that there were great fires burning at the center of the earth, and that this fire, hidden at the heart of earth, is in fact the origin of the sun. The sun, that very symbol of light, of divinity, of oneness, the banisher of shadows, the symbol of reality, itself has its home and its origin in the darkest of dark places, hidden in the heart of the shadows of the earth. Mother of fertility, on whose breast lieth water, whose cheek is caressed by air, and in whose heart is the sun's fire. Crowley goes on to draw a parallel between initiation and alchemy on the one hand, and art production on the other, in particular painting. Here we are dealing once again with a potential hidden within the heart of matter, a light hidden in the heart of darkness, and a process which brings forth that divine light. This is precisely what happens in the transformation of mere matter into artistic medium. Matter itself becomes the bearer or the vehicle of human significance and meaning-making right here on the surface of the earth. Normally, we think of matter as being at odds with human meaning-making. Matter must be forced into shape to become useful in the attainment of human ends. And yet, in the case of the production of a work of art, it is as though there were an intention hidden within matter itself, and rather than being at odds with human intention, enters into collaboration with it to produce a work of beauty which is capable of bearing and expressing human significance in ways we hitherto could not even imagine. Every work of art is the product of at least two creators: the artist and nature. In the case of the production of a work of art, it is as though the world were made by a mind like ours, for a mind like ours. And thus, Crowley says, what is held in common between initiation, alchemy, and art? Nothing less than the transformation of dead matter into a living being. Nature appears alive. The shadows begin to glow with light. I would suggest that this is precisely what we are experiencing as spectators of art when we enjoy it. Our senses come alive. Life glows more strongly. Our senses begin to play. We play, as Nietzsche said, with the seriousness of a child. And it all happens spontaneously, without us even having to try. When we were children, each of us was completely spontaneous, totally innocent. We were very much like stars in their original state. We were at one, not only with the world around us and with our caretakers, but also with ourselves. But as a human being matures, it sheds that sense of oneness in order to become a separate individual. It releases or trades some of its spontaneity and its innocence for knowledge and for skills and for the ability to take aim in life. And as we make the passage into adulthood, we specialize, learn particular skills in order to become more useful to others and to ourselves. And then the ordeal of midlife is to reclaim that sense of spontaneity we relinquished when we went through the narrow passageway from childhood into adulthood. And thus we become wise. The only difference between the wise person and the fool, or the child, is that the wise person is not naive. They understand how the world works, and they are joyous nevertheless. Under ideal circumstances, this shedding of spontaneity and of innocence is gradual, organic. Yet under conditions of trauma, rather than being gradually shed, innocence is instead shattered. Under such circumstances, the human psyche mobilizes its divine, miraculous powers. It creates defenses. It protects the imperishable spirit from the unthinkable. This happens entirely spontaneously, and it is indeed a divine miracle. Yet when these defenses are carried forward into adulthood, they show up primarily as the inability to adapt, to mature emotionally, to spontaneously find meaning in life, or to move toward wholeness. We remain partial, impoverished beings, unnourished by the power of life, in a walled-off world that feels increasingly dead and filled with demonic powers. At that point, the only thing that can destroy what the human psyche created in desperation is the power of darkness. We must venture directly into the shadows and trace our wounds back to their origin. And with the power of a magician, we must heal ourselves. And yet very few have the knowledge or the willingness to accept full responsibility for the darkness in their own lives. And even fewer have the courage to march ardently into the shadows, to stand face to face in the underworld with the Queen of Death. Few of us have the ability to carry our fear all the way. And so there we remain, locked in our own prisons, dimly aware of the existence of something else. And yet, in experiences of beauty, something strange happens. The shadows themselves begin to glow. A thin beam of light makes its way through a crack in the wall. As the poet Novalis said, chaos begins to shimmer through the order of being. Something else begins to call from us, and something in our hearts, dormant, begins to stir. And this stirring oftentimes shows up as a crisis, as an emergency. You've just finished a great novel. You're leaving the theater having just seen a play or a film, and something inside of you stirs, and maybe the thought even occurs to you, my God, something has to change. Something about my life has to change. It has to change. But you don't know how. A work of art doesn't tell you what to do with your life. That's not its job. Beauty is not the same thing as goodness. You don't see a painting or hear a song and then get some kind of download of a plan of what to do with your life. Aesthetic experience does not immediately generate a concept. First and foremost, it creates a feeling. It's just a feeling. And you are thrown back upon your own resources to figure out, what the hell am I going to do? And what you choose to do here distinctly feels like a matter of life or death. And by that, I do not mean that you fear for your life. That's not what this is. It's not like seeing a car speeding toward you down the street. You just jump away. That's not what this is. Death is not really what's at issue here. What's at issue is that you might die without ever having truly lived in the first place. There is something inside of you which is yet unrealized. It's that secret seed. It's that little bit of the light hidden down in the darkness. It is a precious, one-of-a-kind gift which you have neglected. And that neglect feels almost like a crime, like it's murder. It is as if a voice were calling from outside of you. A voice of divinity, a divine voice, which speaks in words which you don't understand them. But that piece of the light inside of you, it understands it. It hears it, even if you won't. And it wants to come out. It wants the attention. It wants to be the God looking through your eyes, through your eyesight, through your physical eyes, to witness the divine within the world, all around it, all the time. Precious, absolutely unique, burning with beauty everywhere. And it's for its sake that you are here. But will you answer the call? Will you take the step forward into the wild heart of life so that that seed may grow and bloom and bear fruit and know the light the true light, all over again, but as if for the first time and forever. That is why in beauty is eternal truth revealed.
This has been a production of Speech in the Silence. Thanks for listening. Visit us at speechinthesilence.com or write us an email at thelemapodcast@gmail.com. Love is the law. Love under will.